London is the birthplace and hometown of hundreds of beloved and timeless fictional characters. But no character's footsteps have left their mark on London quite like Sherlock Holmes. The creation of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Sherlock Holmes may just be London's and the world's most famous detective, and he never even existed. This is A Study in Sherlock. In 1886, a failed doctor turned author named Arthur Conan Doyle wrote the first Sherlock Holmes story, A Study in Scarlet. When it was published a year later, the character of Sherlock Holmes immediately captivated audiences by solving crimes with his amazing powers of deduction.
He's not like us. He's cleverer than us. His character, who is peculiarly able to understand the behaviour, the actions of others, who sees in the world what we all want to see, which is, in a way, everything means something. Everything tells you about what people have been doing.
He's clever, he's dashing, he's a bit mysterious. He lives on the edge a bit, he's a drug addict. He's a crime fighter, he plays violin very badly. He's got this kind of buddy relationship with Watson. It's just a very compelling character.
We could all know Sherlock Holmes, even if we couldn't actually be him. So Holmes is not a superhero. He doesn't have any supernatural or super scientific powers. They're all human powers. They may be beyond the rest of us, but as we read the stories, we can think to ourselves, oh yeah, if I put my mind to it, I could do that. We probably couldn't, but it's nice to think we could.
It's kind of forensic thinking as well as forensic science. During Study in Scarlet, he says to Watson, in solving a problem of this sort, the grand thing is to be able to reason backwards. Most people, if you describe a train of events to them, will tell you what the result will be of that train of events. They can put those events together in their minds and argue from that something will come to pass, something will happen. There are a few people, however, who, if you told them the result, would be able to evolve from their own inner consciousness what the steps would be which led to that result. This power is what I mean when I talk of reasoning backwards.
What it is that the Sherlock Holmes stories dramatise, the idea of a human being able to understand the world more thoroughly and deeply than we normally do.
The stories of Sherlock Holmes became so popular that Conan Doyle ultimately wrote 56 short stories about the character in addition to 4 novels. His stories have been translated into 98 languages, and there have been countless numbers of Holmes adaptations.
It's quite important to know that Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of these stories, isn't a kind of major literary figure.
Although the character of Sherlock Holmes experienced immediate popularity and continues to be popular today, there is much debate about the actual quality of Conan Doyle's writing.
I think it was obvious to people that Arthur Conan Doyle's not a great writer. He really isn't a great writer.
Conan Doyle was a cracking good writer.
No matter which side of the debate you fall on, it is clear that the Sherlock Holmes stories are not considered part of the literary canon.
Even though I was teaching sometimes 19th century literature, Sherlock Holmes wasn't really part of that. You can't probably make your career as a literary academic just being an expert on Sherlock Holmes. You probably can make your career just being an expert on Shakespeare or Henry James or Herman Melville, but not just on Sherlock Holmes.
Even Conan Doyle grew to resent the Sherlock Holmes novels because he did not think they were serious literature.
Conan Doyle wrote Holmes basically to make money, but his great love was writing historical novels. And it got to be a bit aggravating to him that basically his milk cow was the one getting all the attention rather than what he regarded as his more important works.
Doyle wanted to kill Holmes off. He'd had enough of him. And he toppled him over the Reichenbach Falls in a sort of death grip with Professor Moriarty, but then he had to bring him back by popular demand. In the end, he wanted to be taken seriously for those other works, and he never was, and he never will be, and that was a kind of torment to him.
Although Sherlock Holmes is not traditionally thought of as quality literature, the stories did have a significant impact on detective fiction.
He was almost kind of making the template for every detective story that followed. And not just that, but he was kind of discovering things which are at the heart of what any narrative's about.
The influence of the Sherlock Holmes stories reached beyond literature to a completely different subject: forensics. Sherlock Holmes was truly a character that was ahead of his time. Forensic science did not exist in the Victorian era, and yet he was already using techniques that 21st century detectives are using today.
He was the first person to practice ballistics in, I think it was 1912, and that didn't really become more of a refined art and used in a court case until the St. Valentine's Day massacre in the 30s. So you could see how much he was shunting things forward. First Sherlock Holmes story, A Study in Scarlet, he's on the crime scene literally telling the police what to do. He takes out a magnifying glass, which the police have never seen anyone do at that point, and examines the evidence or potential clues. He looks for potential clues, footprints and things that he examines there. And judges the weight and height of someone from the footprints. Again, that's another science which didn't begin really to start until the 1970s. I met a lot of forensic scientists, and almost every one of them said to me they owed a debt to Sherlock Holmes, whether it was in choosing their vocation as a forensic scientist, whether it was in the tools that they used. Sherlock was a touchstone for some of the great names in forensic science. They're not well known to the general public, but Henri Locard, the French detective who started the first crime lab. I genuinely believe that if Sherlock Holmes hadn't, I was going to say existed, but he never existed, but if Sherlock Holmes hadn't been created by Conan Doyle, forensic science would be probably about half a century behind where it is now. If Sherlock came back today to see the forensic science now, I think he'd just say, "What took you so long?"
Sherlock Holmes' impact reaches beyond literature and science. He's also had a huge impact on popular culture, becoming one of the most recognizable fictional characters ever created.
Sherlock Holmes is, by most measures, the most frequently represented character in the history of world fiction. There has to be a reason for that.
It's an odd thing. Sherlock Holmes is one of the several fictional characters, possibly the best known, who is actually better known than his creator.
I can't think of another fictional character who people believed was real. They don't think that of James Bond, for example.
I mean, he's been pitted in science fiction, in supernatural stories, in parodies, some of them very good. Games, computer games, board games, card games.
Underwear.
Oh God, yes. Pillows, cushions, furniture.
They even have costumes for pets.
Oh, yes. Yes, you can buy costumes for your pets, Sherlock costumes. You just have to look online and the range is extraordinary. There's pornography as well.
Oh, yeah.
Sherlock's impact is not only global, it is also personal. People like Roger Johnson and Jean Upton have been brought together through Sherlock Holmes.
We had known each other by correspondence through the newsletter which I wrote and distributed. Jean was one of my first transatlantic subscribers.
Yeah.
Dame Jean Conan Doyle, Sir Arthur's daughter, was a sort of mentor. The following year, when we were married in England, she came to our wedding and she said to one of the other guests, "My father would have loved this." Through Sherlock Holmes, I mean, not only have I got a wife, God bless you, ma'am, but friends pretty much all over the world.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't mean the sort of friends who can unfriend you on Facebook or what have you, but people that I really share an interest with.
Not surprisingly, fans of Sherlock Holmes have flocked to London to see where their favorite detective lived, worked, and played. Their first stop is often the Sherlock Holmes Museum at Holmes' famed address 221B Baker Street. And the Sherlock Holmes walking tour is always a popular weekend activity. After that, they might head over to St. Bartholomew's Hospital to leave a tribute at the place where Holmes and Watson had their first meeting in A Study in Scarlet, and where Holmes seemingly jumped to his death in the BBC series Sherlock. London is also home to the Sherlock Holmes Society of London, one of the oldest Sherlockian societies, along with the Baker Street Irregulars. Sherlock Holmes has existed for 129 years and continues to be an icon of pop culture to this day.
I think Sherlock Holmes will definitely has staying power. There's no doubt about that. There seems to be no abating of the kind of dramatizations and retellings of Sherlock Holmes.
One of the pleasures for us in the last decade or so has been to see younger people coming to the original stories through the films, through the TV series, whether it's Sherlock or Elementary. And they think, oh, this is fun. Oh, there are stories as well. I must read some of those, and they get really hooked. It's great.
Yeah, it was interesting to watch social media when Sherlock was first shown, because a lot of the audience that was seeing it didn't actually realize they were the original stories written by Conan Doyle. And they were suddenly realizing, that bit of dialogue comes from this story. Look, I found it.
Yeah.
And references to characters, certain props, and it got to be this sort of treasure hunt game with each episode. But the great thing was, in every instance, all the kids were going back to the original stories and really enjoying them.
Sherlock Holmes, a character who never even lived, seems unable to die.
There isn't more to learn, but we haven't worn it out, because the message of it is to keep pushing at the frontiers, and that's an eternal message.